Thank you very much indeed, Karen D. That was really lovely introduction. Thank you. Yes, and it's very good to be here, actually. I think these weekends are really wonderful addition to your programme. So I'm talking this morning about the Mudra of Meditation. And this talk is dedicated to my mother, Ailsa O'Brien. So the Dhyana Mudra, the meditation mudra, is a symbol. And as with all symbols, it's pointing to something beyond words, beyond language. The enlightened state, awakening, is a mystery. It's an experience which is hard to communicate. Well, it was so hard to communicate that the Buddha even wondered if he could. You will all remember. This mudra it's a symbol, and with symbols we have to ease ourselves into relationship with them. We need to become acquainted with them, start a conversation, lean into the questions. What does this symbol mean for me? What message does it hold for me? So that could be a point or to explore in your groups. What does the meditation mudra mean for me at this moment? And I think, with symbols, we just need to be interested, curious, and explore them. There's no definitive or right answer. There's no wrong answer. There's just our associations and experience of that particular symbol. And I think with mudra, a hand gesture, this exploration is not only mental, but it's also physical. So what is our actual physical experience of sitting in a particular mudra, a mudra which is representing an aspect of the Buddha's experience? So this weekend, we're exploring and easing our way into relationship with the Dhyana mudra, the mudra of meditation. There's this lovely painting of Amitabha, and you can see that quite clearly there, the mudra of meditation. And mysteriously, there's a white lotus. So I'll come on to that later, but there's the mudra. Yeah, so, maybe we'll all just sit in it. I can't do this. Maybe I need to stand up. Yeah, that's better. The right hand is sitting, palm of the right hand is on the palm of the left hand, and the thumbs are lightly touching. So two palms are cradling each other, and then you have the two thumbs just very lightly touching together. So that's the, and of course, they're in your lap. It's quite a lot of tension if you do it standing up. But anyway, so that's the Dhyana mudra. That's what we're exploring. And of course, it's associated with the with Amitabha, the Buddha of boundless light, the red Buddha of the Western Quarter. So Amitabha is associated with twilight, with the setting sun. And as the sun sets and twilight descends, there's always, in the natural world, there's just a quietening down and a peacefulness. I find it very remarkable because it always happens. So I'm just going to read you a verse from a poem by someone called W. Henley, which sort of captures that sense of peacefulness. A late lark twitters from the quiet skies, and from the west where the sun, his day's work ended, lingers as in content, there falls on the old grey city an influence luminous and serene, a shining peace. So this quiet peace, this luminous, serene state, a shining peace, is what I associate, well, with Amitabha particularly, but with this mudra and sitting down to meditation. It's like we're quieting down all our mental chatter, all our preoccupations, all the sort of chatter and activity of the mind. And I think the thing that I really appreciate about the association with the setting sun and that quieting down in nature is it's just very, very natural. So, you know, when we sit in our meditation postures, there's this, you know, we can be cultivating just this natural quietening down. I'm going to come on to Bante's poem in a minute, which we heard last night, but you know, he talked, or that extract we heard, he talked about lighting the incense, and the perpetual incense burns, that setting up that condition just for our, well, in a way, our faith to come to the fore and to take our thoughts, just let them go. Yes, so settling our body and mind, our senses quieting down, and turning our minds, hearts inwards, and just relaxing into the ground of our being. Yes, we're letting go of ordinary preoccupations of the ordinary mind and setting up conditions for something more creative to unfold. Yeah, so that's one of my first kind of associations with this mudra. And I'm going to read again Bante's poem, which we heard last night. I mean, it is remarkable, actually. It's the whole of the practice. And he said, you know, it's an early poem, and he said it was one of those poems that just sort of more or less, you know, it just appeared, or, you know, he didn't have to work at it. It just kind of presented itself. Here perpetual incense burns, the heart to meditation turns, and all delights and passions burns. 1,000 brilliant hues arise, more lovely than the evening skies, and pictures paint before our eyes. All the spirit's storm and stress is stilled into a nothingness, and healing powers descend and bless. Refreshed, we rise and turn again to mingle with this world of pain, as on roses falls the rain. So a very, very beautiful poem. And as I take up the meditation mudra, as I sort of take this up, it helps my heart turn to meditation, allowing me to turn from the everyday mind. All the spirit's storm and stress is stilled into a nothingness, and healing powers descend and bless. So like that quiet hour before sunset, where the world is still, we can experience that sort of sense of blessings and faith flowing, and sort of creative mind kind of getting into its flow, if you like. So this is just one of my associations with this beautiful mudra. It evokes a sense of peace and blessing. It's also balanced, soft, open, receptive, warm, still, and dynamic. So I want to look at each of these qualities of the mudra. But firstly, I just want to consider the purpose of meditation. It's always useful to stop, pause, review, recommit. So why am I meditating? And again, this might be a question you want to explore in your groups. It's so important to be clear about this. And of course, why we're meditating is going to change both from one session of meditation to another, as well as over time and our spiritual development and growth. We need to bring to our meditation a precise awareness of the meditation, of what we're doing and what we need. So we need to avoid slipping into just being vague and sitting down and wafting into some dozy, sort of daydreamy sort of state, or we need to avoid just becoming quite rigid and tense about what we think we should be doing, or just simply relying on habit. I think what we need to, we need to be cultivating just a sort of as precise an awareness as we can to what we need at any one time. So the stupa visualization, which I think is hugely underrated, so I'm just doing a little plug here, is something that I use. Say if I'd had a break in my meditation through illness or through travel or whatever it is, I will usually do the stupa visualization because I think it just really helps me come back into balance with myself. But it's also a very good practice for all sorts of things. So if you're very distracted, can be a really good and engaging practice to do. So I think, just knowing what we need at any one particular point and, bringing that, using that, using that tool rather than just following our habit. Yeah. And over time, our purpose in meditation, while will probably have changed. So when we started out, it may have been to become less stressed or happier or better able to manage our lives. These days there are lots of secular contexts for meditation, and there's nothing at all the matter with that as far as it goes. In fact, it's really useful and helpful to people. But as our practice deepens, particularly once we're training for ordination and ordained, our fundamental reason for meditation, I would suggest, is to work on our minds. We're not meditating to make ourselves feel more comfortable with worldly life and to sort of try to rearrange our little bit of samsara so that it's as good as it could possibly be. That's not what that's not what we're trying to do here. Nor are we meditating to have big experiences. Bhante said, I've forgotten what he said. Purpose of meditation is not to have good meditation. That's right. So, well, not the purpose, but anyway, yes, we're not meditating to have big, blissful, visionary experiences. If those happen, that's great and well and good, but they just need to be taken in context and not become an end in themselves. We're meditating to transform and reorganize our being. We're meditating to align ourselves more and more fully with the mind of the Buddha. And I think this is absolutely crucial. We need to be clearing the obscuring veils of ignorance and dissolving the poisons so that we can experience our natural creative state of mind. In meditating, we're clearing the decks for action. We're transforming unskillful and unexamined states of mind into integrated and refined states so that we can develop metta, compassion, and be of real benefit for others. So I think, as we grow on the Buddhist path, our meditation becomes one of our main tools for realizing the Bodhisattva ideal in our lives. And it's going to be the sort of fuel, or the working ground for the noble quest for us turning our minds and hearts to awakening. So, it becomes kind of imperative in that context that we're calming and settling our distracted thoughts with gentle and persistent effort to draw the energy out of distraction into our subject of meditation. You'll remember in the Dhammapada, irrigators channel water, wise people train themselves. So we need to be drawing that energy out of distraction, out of worldly concerns, bringing all the little rivulets of our mind, all those little currents that are kind of wafting off wherever they're going. We need to just be bringing them all into a great, deep, calm, smooth, flowing river. And I think I really enjoyed Badri Gupta leading the body awareness meditation this morning. In a way, she was just doing that very skillfully. I had a sort of definite sense of my energies all kind of beginning to flow in the same direction. So, in the mindfulness of breathing, our attention is turned to our breath. All our energy is harmoniously flowing in one direction, and then dhyana can unfold. I find Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche's description of the mind extremely helpful. When I first came across it some years ago, it wasn't a revelation exactly, but it's just so clear. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to read it all. It's 3 paragraphs, but it's a bit hard to cut it down. You can find it in the Puja reading book. So he's describing the intrinsic nature of the mind. What we normally call the mind is the deluded mind, a turbulent vortex of thoughts whipped up by attachment, anger, and ignorance. This mind, unlike enlightened awareness, is always being carried away by one delusion after another. Thoughts of hatred or attachment suddenly arise without warning, triggered off by such circumstances as an unexpected meeting with an adversary or a friend, and unless they're immediately overpowered with a proper antidote, they quickly take root and proliferate, reinforcing the habitual predominance of hatred or attachment in the mind and adding more and more karmic imprints. So just to, our minds and thoughts are just triggered off just like that, and we're just carried off somewhere. I have a very bad habit, which I'm trying to work on, of half reading emails sometimes at a time when I shouldn't be reading them at all. And I misread them, and then I have a reaction to what I've misread. And then I'm kind of off on some chuntering sort of story and speculation or irritation, whatever. And I come back to it and it says something completely different. It's just sort of, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, it doesn't take anything for us to kind of just spiral off into some unskillful reactive mode of mind. So Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche goes on to say, yet, however strong these thoughts may seem, they are just thoughts and will eventually dissolve back into emptiness. Once you recognize the intrinsic nature of the mind, these thoughts that seem to appear and disappear all the time can no longer fool you. Just as clouds form, last for a while, and then dissolve back into the empty sky, so deluded thoughts arise, remain for a while, and then vanish in the emptiness of mind. In reality, nothing at all has happened. When, excuse me, when sunlight falls on a crystal, lights of all colours of the rainbow appear. Yet they have no substance that you can grasp. Likewise, all thoughts in their infinite variety, devotion, compassion, harmfulness, desire, are utterly without substance. This is the mind of the Buddha. There is no thought that is something other than voidness. If you recognize the void nature of thoughts at the very moment they arise, they will dissolve. Attachment and hatred will never be able to disturb the mind. Deluded emotions will collapse by themselves. No negative actions will be accumulated, so no suffering will follow. So Dilgo Khyentse makes it very clear that it's our thoughts that cause all our distress and imprison us. Yesterday was the celebration of the birth of Dr. Ambedkar. And it's a very, very big celebration in India. And caste is one of the cruelest prisons that human beings impose on each other. And, you know, I think it's really, really important to remember Ambedkar was a hugely intelligent man. He was, you know, he was a sort of giant, really. After much thought, he felt the only way out of caste was the Buddhist path. And that's because he thought the only way for us, all of us, to free ourselves is to work on our minds. And we really need to take this to heart and act urgently to free ourselves and to reorganize our being. You know, I fully believe that the ills of the world are resolved by us freeing our minds. So what we're doing in meditation is working on our minds, and very important also to remember that our thoughts are untrue. They have no truth, they have no validity. They're just thoughts, they're without substance. And it's really, I can't say this enough, really, it's really important to really take that on, because they cause us so much trouble, and they don't have any validity. They're just, you know, clouds forming and dissolving. Yes, the true nature of our minds, the mind of the Buddha, is luminous, aware, full of love and wisdom and compassion. It's radiant, poised. So in meditation, we're setting up conditions to move towards the natural state of mind, the mind of the Buddha. So this weekend, we may want to reflect on our meditation, on our motivation for meditation and our intentions in meditation. So you could ask why I meditate, or maybe it's more useful to be asking, what is my motivation? We heard that really interesting reading this morning. So, you know, where on the spectrum between a sort of psychological motivation and a spiritual motivation, where am I at the moment? Because there's nothing the matter with wanting life to be more, to be happier, more joyful, less anxious, all of that. You know, there's nothing the matter with that. It's just that it's only going to take us so far. So maybe the useful question is, where on that spectrum between the psychological and the spiritual, where am I at this moment in time? Am I happy with where I am? Do I want to sort of sharpen up some of it, Yeah. So let's return to this beautiful meditation mudra and explore its qualities of balance, softness, openness, receptivity, warmth, stillness, and dynamism. So the meditation mudra is balanced. Not only are our hands balanced, but the whole body is completely centered in perfect symmetry, balanced and relaxed. It's, when I think, particularly when you're in this mudra, my sense, my body can really feel like a mountain in this mudra. So there's a sense of serenity and tranquility. So sitting in this mudra, bringing ourselves into this, into physical balance and symmetry and alignment, that helps us balance and focus our minds. And I actually find the mudra itself is a wonderful aid to helping my mind to become settled and in balance, because my fingers and palms give immediate and tangible feedback on my state of mind. So when I get distracted, what happens is these thumbs come apart. It's just, if I start thinking about something else, I go back to my thumbs and they're sort of way over here, And then, if you're pressing them together like this, well, there's a suggestion that you're making too much effort there. But when I'm poised and balanced, what happens is there's this wonderful, I can't really describe this, but they're just poised and touching, and you can feel that touch, and a sort of space opens. It's like there's a sort of space between the thumbs, or else the touch of the thumbs kind of expands. As I say, I can't really put that into words. Anyway, you'll just have to play around with it and exploring it. But it is, you do just get this very wonderful, immediate feedback about what's happening and when I'm getting distracted. And I think also it's particularly useful for the sort of grasping after a result, the sort of tension and too much activity, too much gripping, a bit like the bird that Karen D was talking about yesterday. You're just sort of trying to get there, aren't you? So it's really good if your thumbs are tense, then that's a really good sign to develop more of a sense of ease. Also, sometimes we can have a subtle forward movement in meditation, can't we, with our whole body? Well, in our life, actually, it's like we're the kind of physical forward movement all the time. When that happens, when we're in this mudra, it's kind of like you're closing off the space of the palms, you're kind of constricting it. So again, it's useful just to notice what you're doing. So I find it really useful to check in with this mudra during meditation. And just to say, I do sit in this meditation mudra, might not have been obvious, but not everybody does. I was with some friends yesterday meditating, and I just looked at them all, and none of them were in the meditation mudra. So anyway, that's just and thinking of balance, I was reminded of the Buddha's advice on the middle way to Sona, the lute player. And I'm sure you'll remember Sona was well born and an enthusiastic meditator. And he did a lot of walking meditation, and I think he had quite sort of tender feet as a result of his upbringing. Anyway, his feet became cut, blistered, bloody, through overzealous walking. And one day he was assailed by doubt. Thought, was just thinking about giving it all up and returning to his comfortable life because he didn't feel he was really getting anywhere. And obviously he was in pain and wasn't working, and it was all sort of no use really. And there's this nice life over there, which he could just return to. Anyway, the Buddha got wind of this and appears to him. And knowing he was a lute player, he asks Sona, "Now, Sona, what do you think? When the strings of your lute were too taut, was your lute in tune and playable?" And of course, Sona says, "No." And then the Buddha asks, "When the strings of your lute were too loose, was your lute in tune and playable?" And Sona says, "No, Lord." "So what do you think when the strings of your lute were neither too taut nor too loose, but tuned to the right pitch? Was your lute in tune and playable?" "Yes, Lord." So the Buddha replies, "In the same way, Sona, over-aroused persistence leads to restlessness. Overly slack persistence, I haven't looked it up, but persistence here is virya, I think, leads to laziness. Thus, you should determine the right pitch for your persistence, attune the pitch of the 5 faculties, and there pick up your theme." So Sona follows the Buddha's guidance. He attunes his virya. He kind of finds his creativity and finds his balance in meditation, and he becomes an arahant. So, you know, we need to become more and more skillful lute players with a clear sense of purpose and an exploratory, flexible attitude. We need to be developing the art of meditation. So we're playing the right note, finding the right tone. I'm not entirely happy with this word right, but you know what I mean. All metaphors are limited. We need to be sort of finding what allows us, our creativity, to flow. Another meditation, another metaphor that I find helpful for the art of meditation and working with our wayward minds is that of sailing or kite flying, and in more recent years, vultures flying. So at Karshavana, there are vultures, which is one of the wonderful things about it. And they are the most extraordinary birds. They very rarely flap their wings, beat their wings. It's really unusual to see a vulture flapping its wings. So what they're doing is they're just gliding on the thermals. And, you know, that gliding can take them up really high, and it also enables them to change direction. And sometimes you see them, they just alter the angle of their wings. You know, they'll just, because they want to sort of change direction a bit. So you can actually see the kind of this just very subtle alteration. So as we settle with a balanced mind, we're making ever more subtle adjustments to our mind, harnessing its flow, and just making sure that we're, you know, bringing all our energies, harnessing all our energies. So we're just making these very subtle adjustments as we become more concentrated on our meditation object. It just needs a very light touch. It's, you know, sort of I think the sort of the way that we're working with our minds in meditation as we become more concentrated, it's about grace and lightness. And sort of subtlety, but we're just kind of the mind's, the mind's energies are still kind of moving about, and we just need to be working very creatively with that. And, again, you can come back to that question, what are my hands, what are my thumbs doing? And that will tell you what you need to do, whether you need more energy or less energy. Yeah, so the Dhyana Mudra is balanced. And again, that could be something you could be reflecting on over this weekend, is how do I work with balance? How do I create balance in my practice? It's also soft, open, and flexible. So our hands and our palms are soft, they're pliant, they're at ease. They're not holding on, not gripping, not tight, but gently resting in our laps. And this physical sense of ease and openness supports our minds settling at ease and being soft and open. There needs to be nothing forced about our meditation. Samadhi is a natural state arising when we're happy. And as we know from the spiral path, samadhi is the natural result of faith, joy, bliss, and so on. I think recognizing this is very important. And this is what I think the Buddha probably realized when he recalled his childhood experiences of spontaneously entering the first dhyana, which is the crucial turning point on his quest to enlightenment. And we heard in the reading last night, we heard the Buddha talking about that. Just to remind you, he was sitting under the rose apple tree when he was a young boy, when he spontaneously entered a state of meditative absorption. And he sat there all day, serene and happy. And recollecting this as a man on the threshold of enlightenment, as well as realizing that perhaps he'd been avoiding pleasure and seeing that as the wrong path, which Kona D was saying last night, I think he also saw that however subtly there was a forced element to his meditation, that somewhere, he was trying to force something, that there was too much effort, too much willfulness, and that the key to awakening was a natural unfolding of the whole being, taking place through the steady application of mindfulness. So, I think that this really important, is a very important lesson for us in this, and that we need to be bearing it in mind, and trusting that, if we are cultivating a sense of ease in our meditation, that will allow a natural unfolding, and our minds will just naturally become more settled, more concentrated. And this mudra contains, cradles and holds all our mental states. So whatever state we're in, we can just allow irritation, ill will to just be there in the palms of our hands, and allow the meditation to work on that. It's not like we have to be forcing ourselves into a particular sort of direction. Awareness itself has its own power, and we can just create conditions of ease to allow a sort of malleability and flexibility of mind, which will transform our mental states. So our palms are open, receptive, an open bowl to life. to what is present, to the sacred. So we can just let our consciousness relax into a state of ease and receptivity. So I found myself unable to say very much about receptivity for some reason when I was writing this talk. So I'm just going to read you a poem, which for me just says it all, really. So that's better, really. This is Priceless Gifts by Anna Swear. An empty day without events, and that is why it grew immense as space. And suddenly happiness of being entered me. I heard in my heartbeat the birth of time, and each instant of life, one after the other, came rushing in like priceless gifts. I heard in my heartbeat the birth of time, and each instant of life, one after the other, came rushing in like priceless gifts. So, yeah, I think, we can just trust ourselves that if we've set up the conditions, then whatever is unfolding in our meditation is helpful, is good, whatever it is. Returning to the mudra, it's warm. So love pouring into the world. Our meditation is imbued with warmth, kindness, love, whatever practice we're doing. The mind of the Buddha was a great, loving, golden awareness, poised for skillful action. So whatever practice we're doing, whatever our object of meditation, whether it's the breath, other people, a colour, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, mindfulness and metta are both present. So we're meditating to transform ourselves in order to transform the world, to become good enough vessels for the bodhicitta to flow through us. And the mudra is still. So it's pointing us to viveka. Viveka's a significant word in Buddhism, which means solitude, seclusion, withdrawal. And when we meditate, we need to enter the solitude of body and mind. So that's kaya viveka and chitta viveka. So kaya viveka, our body is in seclusion, which is what we do on retreat. But it's also important to be cultivating this quality in daily life, because so much of our time is spent not on retreat. So we need to be making sure that we're getting some seclusion and solitary time. And I think one of the really useful things about an online retreat is that we're creating retreat conditions in the midst of our daily life. So, by being on this retreat, we're creating conditions for, viveka, we're creating seclusion. So how can we do that? Whether it's both, so physically we can do that by taking ourselves on retreat, by having a shrine room, by creating conditions in our homes that give us some sense of seclusion and being away from the world, withdrawal from the world, so that we can still and calm the body and then turn our attention within. When the body is still, we can gather our minds and focus. So with chitta viveka, we're disentangling our mind from the hindrances and the kleshas. we're renouncing worldly concerns. The mind quietens, distractions subside, energies calm, and cravings fall away. You know, the 5 factors of absorption will become present, and they're very useful list. I think our mind is one-pointed, there's rapture and pretty, there's rapture, bliss, and initial and sustained thought. In the reading last night, the Buddha said, out of seclusion, dhyana arose. So, you know, that's really important. I think that it's out of our seclusion, out of our quietness, out of our turning away from the world, that's a very important condition for concentrated states of mind to arise. So we can be, you know, I think it's important to be looking at how we can be cultivating that in our daily lives, how we can be turning away from worldly concerns, even in the midst of, you know, living in a world. And I think that comes from creating times of quiet and solitude and so on. We're very, very used to excitement, activity, stimulation, drama. And this is strongly reinforced by the world around us, never more so than today. And we become intoxicated with ourselves and addicted to activity and stimulation. So it's important for our meditation that we find ways to cultivate viveka, turn off our phones, go for a walk, look at a tree, all the practical things that we could do. But at the same time, I think we need to be developing a confidence and clarity about the value of it. Because, you know, excitement is, stimulation is, well, it's just addictive. And we're, our phones and computers are just programmed now to draw us in to all of that. So we need to be finding ways that where we begin to believe and have faith and confidence that a quiet, tranquil mind is better than a busy, multitasking mind. Tranquil, spacious, serene mind, for most of us, is not habitual. So we need to be creating conditions to experience that. And it might help to develop a sentence that you say to yourself regularly, to remind yourself, which you'll find your own way, but something like, I like or want to cultivate a smooth, malleable, poised mind, or I enjoy a feeling of spaciousness, or quietness is really transformative. I don't know. Anyway, you know, I think it's really important. We need to be giving ourselves all the support we can in various ways. When water is in a narrow gorge where there's the resistance of rock, there's a lot of activity, turbulence, energy, and so on. But if that same body of water has no boundary, we have the ocean, which is deep, fathomless, still and vast. Our minds are naturally still, naturally at ease, naturally poised. It's only our self-made limitations that create the agitation and the dis-ease, the ego desperately trying to dam and stop the flow of conditions or direct it in a particular direction. So those are just some sort of pointers really, but one very significant way, of course, that we can strengthen viveka is to actually go on solitary. And this, I seem to be using the word important an awful lot here. Anyway, this is a crucial practice. You can really see the mind at work. And you can also really settle down with your mind and get a sense of how it works and how you work with it. So again, you could be reflecting this weekend, when did I last go on solitary? And how, so solitaries are really important. And it's one of the 15 points that Bhante gave to new and old order members, was to go on solitary once a year. And some people are really exemplary in this, and others of us, it's very easy for solitaries to fall by the wayside. And that in itself is interesting, how they fall by the wayside. Anyway, when did you last go on solitary, or when are you going on solitary? And how can I cultivate viveka in my life? Finally, and paradoxically, the meditation mudra is dynamic. It's alive, vital. The hands are not passive, but they're poised and pliant, and they create this oval space between the palms and the thumbs. So the mudra is embracing space. It's caressing shunyata. Here is an aware space of transformation, the space of limitless potential where anything and everything is possible. Into that space, we can choose to introduce a reflection like impermanence, or we might find a lotus blossoming there, as happens in this, my painting of Amitabha, or as we heard the Buddha's vision of beings or growing spiritually as lotuses. So a lotus might be blossoming there or in our hearts, or a Pure Land might unfold as it does with the Buddha. So our blossoming, our transformation is held by our tender hands, and we have the potential to become free and awake. I'm about to finish. Can you cope with another poem? Okay. So this is a wonderful poem by Denise Levertov called The Métier of Blossoming. Means work, the work of blossoming. And it's about an amaryllis flower. And it just so happens I was given an amaryllis at Christmas. And they are most extraordinary plants that just grow from this bulb. And I did really feel I could see it growing day by day. I didn't go as far as actually measuring it, but it felt like every time I looked at it, it had grown more. Anyway, they are just completely astonishing. So, fully occupied with growing, that's the amaryllis, growing especially at night. It would take only a bit more patience than I've got to sit keeping watch with it till daylight. The naked eye could register every hour's increase in height, like a child against a barn door, proudly topping each year's achievement. Steadily up goes each green stem, smooth, matte, traces of reddish purple at the base, and almost imperceptible vertical ridges running the length of them. 2 robust stems from each bulb, sometimes with sturdy leaves for company, elegant sweeps of blade with rounded points. Aloft, the gravid buds, shiny with fullness. One morning, and so soon, the first flower has opened when you wake. Or you catch it poised in a single brief moment of hesitation. Next day, another shy at first like a foal, even a third, a fourth, carried triumphantly at the summit of those strong columns, and each a Juno, calm in brilliance, a maiden giantess in modest splendor. If humans could be that intensely whole, undistracted, unhurried, swift from sheer unswerving impetus, if we could blossom out of ourselves, giving nothing imperfect, withholding nothing. So, yes, so the meditation mudra contains our potential for transformation and for growing closer to the truth. It contains the potential for us to blossom out of ourselves, giving nothing imperfect, withholding nothing. To conclude, the meditation mudra, the dhyana mudra, is a physical bodily symbol which points us towards the meditation experience. And as with all symbols, its meanings and associations are not fixed and finite. I've shared some of my associations of the mudra with you and the meaning it holds for me. But you'll have your own associations which you can explore and deepen. You can also, I think, map things onto this mudra, like our system of practice maps onto it very well. Integration, positive emotion, spiritual receptivity, and spiritual death and rebirth. I think Bhante's poem also is contained in this mudra, and you can probably map the spiral path onto it as well. But whatever has meaning for you is your meaning and your experience. That's what the symbol holds for you. I've described these qualities of peacefulness, balance, receptivity, softness, openness, warmth, stillness, and dynamism. It speaks of wisdom and compassion, and above all, it points us to embracing and caressing shunyata. It holds the promise that we can lovingly shape our world, becoming more and more clearly aligned with the mind of the Buddha. So just to finish with the last 3 lines of Bhante's poem, refreshed, we rise and turn again to mingle with this world of pain, as on roses falls the rain.